Hi, I wanted to show you a little bit of a demo of some of the cool stuff that you could do with the Aurora HDR 2017. I keep talking about it and realized that you hadn't seen everything that could be done with it. So I thought I might show you a quick overview. Now, I don't have a camera that includes bracketing, which means I don't have the ability to shoot multiple exposures for HDR. Now, you would think that would be necessary considering this is an HDR program. My goal here is to show you exactly what we could do even if we don't have multiple exposure brackets. I would love to have that. I'm waiting to get a camera that allows me to do that. I'm going to take an image that I took a long time ago of one of my favorite places, the carousel at Prospect Park in New York. And I'm going to ask it to create an HDR of this. I'm going to try and keep my adjustments rather simple. Now, in our settings here, let me adjust this window just a little bit. In our settings here, we have a number of different kinds of presets we can use. Aurora HDR gives us a setting for some realistic HDR settings, some more dramatic choices, whether or not we're shooting landscape or indoor shots. I'm going to try something just from the realistic HDR preset. I'm not going to get into things like, oh my goodness, you could add additional layers. You could do all sorts of adjustments. I'm going to do something real simple just as you could see how cool this is. One of the problems I have with this image is it's kind of, well, you can see that the flash went off and it didn't go very deep. However, a lot of detail got captured that I can't necessarily see. If I start out with their preset called Realistic Bright, notice that it starts to pull out a lot of the detail in the background that I might have missed had I done anything else other than what I was choosing to do inside here. This alone makes it worth me being able to find it. However, if I don't love the preset settings that I currently have, that doesn't mean I have to live with them exactly the way they are. For example, we have adjustments over tone, and you'll notice it's using something called smart toning. Everything that I do has the ability for me to adjust it. I do like the fact that it opens up a lot of the detail in the background, so I am going to bring that all the way up, but you'll notice my highlights setting is brought rather down. I might want a little bit more of this, so I can actually increase the highlights. Ooh, that's a little bright. And bring it down so that I don't end up with something what they call specular, where if I were to print it, it would come out like paper. I can actually pull up some of the gold inside here. Don't necessarily even need to change my shadows, although what this is choosing to do is open my shadows. Let's take a look at what it does. I don't want to go too far because I don't want to get grays. I'm also going to increase some of the contrast in this image. Now I am going for a reasonably realistic look inside here. We now get to the structure setting, and I've increased the clarity of a lot of the detail in here pretty heavily, or at least the program did by default. If I bring that down, let's just take a quick look. Do you see how some of this area here has sort of unsharpened a little bit? I'd rather bring up some of the detail. I think this carousel was pretty special. Now, because I went with a realistic look, we don't have, and I'm air quoting here, the HDR look turned very far up. You've probably seen this where things are pretty extremely saturated in HDR. Let me show you what we might be able to get if I implement that look on here. Just give it a second to sort of overwrite. And let me boost that so that we can see it. Do you see now what I'm talking about with the increased HDR? It's popping all of those tones. If I wanted that as a creative outlet, that would be just fine. I'd rather have this thing look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to pull down my little HDR look, maybe leave a little bit on it. I could also play with how much detail this thing is going to pull out. So as I pull it up, I'm getting a lot of little subtleties in this horse's mane, for example. The image doesn't have a lot of noise. I do in the floor. Let me see if I can't maybe smooth that out just a bit. See what that pulls for me. I'm pulling from areas of detail that don't necessarily have that. That's a little bit softer for that. Image radiance gives me the radiance of the image. You can see these reds are pretty screamy. I don't have to necessarily go there, but I do want to pull it up so that you can see some of the effect in here. And I can increase the brightness of the brighter parts of the image. So I've got a little bit more contrast going on, but I still have a lot of detail in the background. I haven't lost that at all. I can choose whether or not I want to warm the image or cool the image. I have a good mix of warm and cool tones. My little horsey here is pretty warm looking, but in the background I've got a lot of the blue of the sky. I can play with this. Let's see what happens if I blew it out. Ooh, that's definitely too cool for me. If I go the other way, wow, that's a little warm. So I'm going to keep that pretty neutral. Now, if I hyper saturate everything, all my colors are going to sort of scream and glow. You see, that's just too much. But I have the ability to do that if I wish. Instead, I can go up here to the vibrance setting. That gives me smaller detail and allows me to sort of change out just take a look at the green. You can really see it in the green and the blue on his saddle and such. I'll bring that down so that we can sort of make it a lot more realistic looking. Now, if I wanted to play with the temperature and tint, I find that this is actually a little bit magenta-y for me. This image has a little bit of pink hue in it. I'll lower that tint just, oh, that's a little much here. Maybe -1 is enough for that. Now, how do I know I'm improving things? Up at the top of the screen, I either can turn off the effect. This is what it looked like when I started. This is where I've brought it. I'm trying to keep it subtle. We don't have to. I also have the ability to view this as a split screen, before and after, so I can see whether or not I'm addressing the areas I'd really like to see. I even have the ability to view a side-by-side. This is the original. This is the updated view. Let me go back to the regular view on here so that we can see everything as I work. Now, if I wanted just a little bit of jump, a little bit of bump inside here, I might add a little bit of glow. I don't want to go crazy. That's a glow. Inside here, I might just want to pop out some of the stronger, bolder colors. After all, my focus was primarily this guy. Now, I can also, in more advanced settings, create a new layer, and with this paintbrush allow myself to sort of blur out the background. I just want you to see the overall look inside here, and I do want to pull up some detail. See how this is starting to really sharpen out? That's a little much. Bring that down just a little bit. Then we have some real fun. This top area, it's cool, but I don't necessarily really want to have a lot of that going on in here. I have the ability to brighten or darken the top of an image or the bottom of an image. I sort of want to keep the bottom the way it is. I kind of like this, but it's cutting off a little bit of his head. I just want to really focus it up there. Notice that I have the ability to change the focus of where my effect is happening for my lighting effect. I could rotate this. I'm not going to rotate this particularly. For those of you who understand the curves adjustment, I do want to open up some of that background. I'm going to pull this here, but I want to make sure that this area hasn't been pulled too far, so I'm actually going to sort of flatten the image out a little bit. And let's see if there are any colors that I need to... Oh, these reds are pretty screamy, don't you think? I think I'm going to lower the saturation on some of the reds so they don't scream so much. That just means how much color is going into here. And to finish it up, I can add a little bit of a vignette. Right now it has a negative vignette. I'm going to darken it up just a little bit more on the edges. I'm going to soften those edges up a little bit. I just want to give a little bit of focus to the center on that. And that's just a couple of the settings that I can do in a really quick movement using Aurora HDR. One more thing I forgot to show you. The split screen. I want you to see just the little, again, very realistic kind of improvement in this particular case. I don't have to go so crazy, but I'd forgotten to show you the split screen.
Thanks for watching. AYM for Training offers live, instructor-led online and on-site training in a variety of software applications. Please contact us at any of these locations for further information.